was involved in Kiruv for many years. Sometimes, at least to me, it seems the word is used so often when I first started, it was sort of maybe a novel concept. It's not so novel anymore. The word it gets bandied about so much, like many other words that are used very often. Sometimes, it seems to me at least, maybe the meaning gets a little bit lost. David HaMelech said in Tehillim, Kirvas Elokim li tov. To me, closeness to Hashem is good. In other words, ultimately, all good, any meaningful definition of good is simply going to be a function of closeness to Hashem, and all bad or evil is simply going to be a function of distance from Hashem. When we talk about kiruv rechokim, kiruv krovim, in a certain sense, that difference is artificial. At the end of the day, it's really the same thing. Kiruv is closeness to Hashem, period. Having said that, I would like to start off, I'd tell you a kiruv story. I grew up in Chicago, in what probably would be called a modern Orthodox community. I don't want to cast chas v'shalom aspersions on anybody. I only speak for myself when I say this. I don't speak for anyone else who lived in my community. Personally, my personal experience was I would describe myself as being kind of heavy on the modern and kind of light on the Orthodox. You know, we all know that the Navi condensed all of the mitzvahs into one, Habakkuk, Tzadik b'emunaso yichya. I condensed all 39 malachas. We had a condensed version of the 39 malachas. You know, you don't turn on the lights, you don't drive in a car, you don't cook. Like, what else is there? I mean, you know. And talk about Kitzur Hilchos Shabbos. We had a very simple bechina in Yoredeya. You know, you went into a store, you looked at the ingredients, it doesn't say pork, it's kosher. Like that was sort of where I was at. And I didn't really know any different, I didn't know any better. It seemed that's the way things were. I went to the local Orthodox high school, I did kibbutz afterwards, and I came back and I went to university. I didn't particularly enjoy university. In fact, I disliked it intensely for reasons that some people might find interesting, but we're not going to go into it here. The only thing I was really, I think at that point in my life I really cared about and took seriously was guitar, and I was hoping to embark on a musical career. Now, at one point during my year on kibbutz, I had met a guy who was learning at Keren B'Yavneh, also from Chicago, who also was into guitar. So we kind of had something in common. We became friendly, and we would run across each other's paths in Chicago once in a while. He was then learning at Brisk Yeshiva. At that point, there was Brisk Yeshiva. Under the Rosh Yeshiva was Rav Soloveitchik, Zichron Revacha. And occasionally, when he would talk to me, he would say, "You want to come here? You know, Rav Aharon's giving a shiur. Would you like to hear it? He's speaking in public, etc., etc." Now, I was not really interested at all. After all, in that yeshiva, I knew what they were doing. They were learning Gemara all the time. And you know, from my perspective, even though I had studied, I had gone to Gemara classes. The idea that somebody could actually sit and study Gemara all day, to me, meant that they were either, you know, there was something seriously, they had some kind of disorder, psychological disorder. Maybe they had come from Mars. It was beyond my comprehension. And the only reason like I say, I sort of related to this guy who was very serious. He was studying for smicha. He played guitar, so somehow that modified it. I was able to deal with him. To make a long story short, I became very disillusioned with school. I didn't see any point to it. I even became disillusioned with a musical career for a number of different reasons. Not that I didn't achieve a certain level of accomplishment in music and in playing guitar. And I didn't really see much point to anything. I wasn't giving up the level of the mitzvahs that I was keeping. I wasn't prepared to do that. You know, as I said, it was very easy for me to chazer Hilchos Shabbos all the time. But I had decided that I'm just going to drop out, make some money, travel around the world. I didn't really see much point to anything. At this point, when the semester was over, that's what my plan was. It turns out I ran into this guy, and he said to me, Rav Aaron is speaking tonight. He's giving a public shir. Would you like to hear him? And at this point, I said to myself, you know what? Like, what the heck difference does it make? Like, nothing else I'm doing means anything. I'm not enjoying anything else that I'm doing. Like, why not? I mean, in fact, it's different. So in any case, I said, okay, I'll go. What the heck? Now, I went, and I don't know how many, most of you are probably maybe a little too young, but, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik was a brilliant man. I didn't really understand anything that he said, but that wasn't the point. The point is, at the end of the shir, what I did realize, what I was shocked to realize, was that every single preconceived notion, every single stereotype I was carrying around in my head of what something like this would be like, and what Rav Aaron Soloveitchik would be like, what the audience would be like, completely false. Every single thing that I thought would happen there, it was exactly, well, I won't say exactly the opposite. The point is that I was completely wrong. Completely wrong. And at the end, I sat there stunned. And I'm thinking, my God, for how many years did I have this picture in my head of what this was all about? I said, what else was I wrong about? I was just in shock. Anyway, Lamaisa, again, to make a long story short, and maybe the story's already too long, but I ended up, after the semester, I ended up learning in the yeshiva, full-time. I ended up going to Eretz Yisrael, and some years later, I embarked on I started getting very involved in Kiruv. Now, I have Talmidim who, from literally starting from nothing, who have gone on to make Siyumim in Shas. I have Talmidim who have become great master mechanchim, serious mechanchim, whether it's in the yeshiva world, in the Kiruv world. I had a Talmud who, in a certain Kiruv organization, he used to have 200 people a week coming to hear him speak. There was a Russian guy I taught in LA. He became one of the heads of Yad L'Achim in Eretz Yisrael. Who knows how many people he saved doing Yad L'Achim? Families who have grandchildren already. There was a young woman who is a teacher here in Yerushalayim. And one time I ran into her in the street. She had her children with her, and she said, she was so excited. She said, Rabbi Averick, what do you think? These are your spiritual grandchildren. She was so sincere. I almost started crying. I didn't know what to say. I was just completely overwhelmed. She happens to be a brilliant mechanechet. I'm not embarrassed to say she knows more Torah than I do. Brilliant teacher. By the way, I'm not bragging, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm just telling you the way things are. The universe is a different universe because of the people that I taught. Obviously, I'm a shaliach from Hashem. I don't know, that goes without saying. Am Yisrael is a different Am Yisrael because of the people that I touched. And I assure you, I am among the smallest of the small fries. I am not a big heavy hitter, believe me. And all of that happened. Why? Because some guy said to me, do you want to go hear a shir? When I was at the point in my life when I was literally prepared to aimlessly drift around the whole world, he said, you want to come hear a shir? Even though I'd said no a couple of times already. So I want you all to write this down. Sophisticated Kiruv techniques, advanced sophisticated Kiruv techniques. Maybe you'd like to hear a shir? Or maybe you'd like to eat at my house for Shabbos? Okay, should I repeat it? Is it complicated? Is it the whole universe, the different universe, because you took the trouble to say this to him? Okay. And by the way, also, obviously, if I have any inkling of what Avodas Hashem is, if I have any inkling of what Limud Torah is, it's also only because he took the trouble to ask me a simple question. It was not high pressure, believe me. We happened to run into each other, and he happened to say that to me. Now, I want you to imagine, what if that was almost like a casual request he made. Imagine if you devote yourself to it. Obviously, in the right time, in the right place, in the right way, with the right training, at the right point in your life, imagine what you could do. You might create a whole new universe. A whole new universe. That's my Kiruv story. I'm going to ask an obvious question, and I'm going to then also give the obvious answer. If Hashem wants Limud HaTorah in his world, right? Well, he's got the Vilna Gaon, he's got Rabbi Akiva Eger, the Chassam Sofer, he's got, right? We're not even gonna talk about going back further to Rishonim, to the Tanoim, to Chizkiyahu HaMelech. These are things that are completely beyond our comprehension. What exactly, once you kind of got the Vilna Gaon in your pocket, what exactly am I doing here in terms of learning Torah? What does Hashem want from me? The same goes for Avodas Hashem. If Hashem wants tzidkus, he wants chassidus. Okay, he's got the Chafetz Chaim. What exactly does he need me for? It's a good question. And it's an obvious question, and we all know the obvious answer. And the obvious answer is, and by the way, I don't say this from Svara. I don't know if you could talk about the Ratzon Hashem, describe the Ratzon Hashem from Svara. We have our Masorah that Hashem told us what the obvious answer is. We know it from Chazal. There's the Meferish Gemara where one of the Moroim says, "Kol ma shebara Hakadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamo lo bara davar batal echad levatol." Excuse me, lo bara davar echad levatol. And that means even the trees. There's no tree that's here for no reason, and certainly we're not here for no reason. Rav Tzadok HaKohen writes in Tzidkas HaTzadik. He says the following. He says, "Kishem shetzarich Adam lahamin b'Hashem yisbarach." Just like you have to believe in Hashem, kach tzarich acher kach lahamin ba'atzmo. Afterwards, you have to believe in yourself. You have to kavayachol believe in yourself the same way you believe in Hashem, and that Hashem. He goes on to say that Hashem has a special asek with you. You have to believe that. In the same way you have to have emunah in Hashem, you have to have emunah that Hashem has a special asek with you. Hashem is infinite. There's no difference to Hashem between talking to one person or talking to 1 billion people. When you're dealing with infinite energy, infinite power, infinite scope, there is no difference at all. Hashem has infinite attention and infinite energy to devote to every single person. And if we're here, he wants us here. And it means that if I'm here, that if Hashem already had the Chafetz Chaim and all the other great tzaddikim, and I'm still here, it means there's something that I was created, and there's some kochos that I was given, and a job that I have, that the Chafetz Chaim could not do. What I'm saying is the following, in the context of what we're talking here. Every single individual has a unique vision of Hashem. We're talking about Kiruv. Kiruv is only bringing people closer to Hashem. That's all, everything is all about, is revealing Hashem in the world, is Kavod Shamayim. Everyone here has a unique window, a unique way you can open up a window that people can get a glimpse of Hashem that nobody else can do. And eventually, what I would hope and pray for every single person is that you're going at the right time in the right place to share that unique vision that nobody else can give to people. Nobody else can do it. What is that unique vision? I'm not a Navi. I can't tell you. I'm not, what we hear, the stories about the great tzaddikim, the Baal Shem Tov, could look at a person's shorish neshama. I can't. I'm working on it, but I can't yet. In fact, I once heard a pshat that what Yisro really was screaming at Moshe Rabbeinu about, he says, "What are you doing? You're going to ruin the nation if you're sitting from morning till night doing, giving judgments in a din Torah." What he was really saying is that other people are qualified to decide in a din Torah who owes the money to who. He says, you should be spending your time, you can tell people what their unique task in the world is. If you don't do that, who's going to do that? People will go off. The most frustrating, horrible, one of the most frustrating, horrible feelings that a person can have is they don't really understand their unique place in this world. It is, and when we felt it, we all know how frustrating it is. In any case, I don't know how to tell you what it is. That's something that through learning Torah, through keeping mitzvos, and obviously the most important thing of all is to have a proper Rebbe and proper Rabbi to guide you. And Be'ezus Hashem, every person will find that unique vision that they have to offer. But what I want to talk about next is maybe in a general way. What is it, what vision are we offering when we talk about Kiruv, when we're talking about reaching out to whoever it might be? What is it that we're trying to offer? You know, one of the things this was back in the early 80s when Kiruv was sort of again, a little more of a pioneering spirit. It's a little more professional now, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that shocked me most of all was not that, Baruch Hashem, we had Hatzlach. That did shock me. What shocked me was the attitudes of many people in the Frum community. Now, it's less, obviously much less nowadays, and the fact that many Chozrei B'tshuva, Baalei Tshuva have come into the community itself has made a tremendous difference in the whole outlook of the Frum world. But one of the things that always is that how many people would come up to me and they would say, they thought, they didn't understand, they thought like we were doing voodoo. It was like, what do you do? Like, do you like to do, it's like they were, one of the, is there like a magic, do you like sprinkle magic powder on them? You have little dolls and you make these incantations over dolls. In other words, they would say, how can you do that? Why would somebody want to leave? They've got this great life. They're making money. They're partying. They can do whatever they want. Why would somebody want to actually be from? Now, my first reaction when I heard this so many times, it was discouraging in many ways. I think it's obviously much less. People have seen the success of it. But the idea, my first reaction was a harsh judgment. I said, what kind of Jewish life are you living if you don't understand why people would want to become, get involved in Torah? But I realized that it's not so simple. It wasn't so simple. People get used to things. It is so, when Chazal said, Ovar v'shona, nasis kaheter ba'enav, all it takes is, you shoplift twice. The first time you shoplift, your heart's beating. And the second time, by the third time, you don't notice it anymore. Not that you don't know that it's wrong, but the psychological effect is gone. I had a friend, unfortunately, who went off the derech. He didn't go off totally. The guy I went to high school with. In fact, if you want to hear how he still sort of holds on to his Jewish neshama, it's the following way. He said the following. He got married, unfortunately, to a non-Jewish woman, but he refused to have children. He said, he told me, I'm not having kids. I said, why? He said, because I don't believe in anything. However, the only thing that could possibly be true is Torah. That's the only religion that could possibly be true. He said, and just in case I'm wrong, I do not want to have goyim as children. That's what he told me. Okay. Hopefully, Hashem should from that little point, you can go a long way. In any case, the reason I told you that story was because this same guy told me that the first time he finally got up the nerve to go into a McDonald's and eat a treif hamburger, he threw up he ate the hamburger, he threw up on the table. Okay? Second time was a little more difficult. He said by the third time he didn't think about it anymore. So anyway, you get used to things very, very quickly and very, very easily. And you get used to living a Torah life. You get used to it. And Rav Yaakov Weinberg once pointed out, I heard him say in his shir, that the Torah, when it describes Am Yisrael coming to Midbar Sinai before Kabbalah Satorah, it says they came and they camped in Midbar Sinai. And then the pasuk says, Vayavo may Refidim vayelchu me Refidim vayavo el midbar Sinai, and he asked the obvious question. We already knew the first pasuk in that parsha says they're in midbar Sinai. What did he have to tell us this for? And he said the thing that it added was it told us where they came from. They came from Refidim. And what happened at Refidim? Many things, but the Pashut Pshat is the war with Amalek. And he said from here you see that one of the prerequisites to really accepting a Torah is you need to see what Amalek is. When you see what it's like without Torah, then you really understand what Torah is. And that's part of it. So what I just want to spend a few moments on is this lingering question that sometimes people still have. Why would someone abandon? What was someone's having a great life out there? What is it? What is it that we are offering? I wrote a column for 2 years for a Jewish news site called Allgemeiner.com, okay? And believe it, some people actually even read the columns. It's not the most popular website in the world, but in any case, I got a kick out of it. I enjoyed some of the comments people had, people wrote. In any case, I wrote once a column called the following. It was called Atheism, Freud, and the normal wholesome life. Now, what inspired me to write the column? I happened to be looking at a website that was designed for, non-believers, atheists, skeptics, etc. And they had a picture of Sigmund Freud and a quote from Sigmund Freud. And the quote went as follows. Freud said the following: "When man is freed of religion, he has a better chance to live a normal and wholesome life." So now, when I heard this, if you learn the Gemara a little bit, you have a bunch of questions. When man is freed from religion, which religion? All religions? One religion? A particular religion? Which part of religion? What do you mean? What do you mean by freed from religion? You mean the parts where it says, love your neighbor as yourself, or it says you should take care of the widow and the orphan? The part where it says that all human beings are created in the image of God, as opposed to the atheistic view where all human beings evolved from a pond of scum and we evolved in the image of the bacterium? Which part of religion are you talking about? The next question obviously is, what exactly do you mean by a normal and wholesome life? What does that mean? You can go out on the street, you go to Chicago, downtown Chicago, ask 100 people, what's a normal, wholesome life? I guarantee you'll get 100 different answers. People will say, well, to be happy. I want to be happy. Well, what makes you happy? And you start hearing the answers. What makes people happy? You'll get a little bit of a shock. But what do you mean? So what do you mean by normal, wholesome? So what is the meaning of this statement exactly? Now, I decided to post a little comment on the website, on this particular website. I didn't mention any of the things I just said right now. However, I said it in the column, but I didn't say it on the website. In the website, I posted the following. Quote, this is what I said. Sigmund Freud also wrote that, quote, he wrote this in a letter to one of his disciples. He said, quote, "The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick, since objectively neither has any existence." I want to read that again. This is Sigmund Freud. "The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick, since objectively neither has any existence." In other words, when all the music stops, when there's no newspapers around, you're just sitting alone in your room at night, and you think, what is really, I'm talking about from his point of view, from the view of a person who doesn't believe in Hashem, who doesn't believe in Torah. What is the point to exist? There is no real point. We're here, and then we're going to be gone. I mean, Freud understood this. There is objectively, meaning in reality, there is no meaning and there is no value to life. So I posted the comment, I said, human life then in reality has no meaning and no value. Is that a good basis for a normal and wholesome life? In other words, if you teach a generation of children that human life has no value and no existence, or I would teach that to my children, my guess is that at some point they're going to be looking for a psychiatrist, very rapidly, okay? So what do you do with that? In other words, and what's even more crazy, more ironic, and more, in fact, it's not even ironic, it's absurd. There's an absurdity here. Sigmund Freud says that objectively speaking, there is no value or no meaning to human life. And then what did he proceed to do? He devoted his entire life to studying human existence, human value, What was he doing? There is no meaning and value, but I'm going to devote my life to writing books. I'm going to study human beings and devote my life to writing books about them. What sense does that make? Well, the only sense that it makes is that if he didn't do that, he would sit around literally, and I'm not saying this facetiously, being sick. Because what else do you do when you face that reality? You be sick. Either you sit and you get sick, and eventually you take a long walk off a short ledge, or you find something to take up your time and devote yourself to. If you think that I'm what's the word? If you think I'm exaggerating here, I'm going to read you something else from another very popular non-believing philosopher, and he wrote the following. And this really sums up the dilemma, and if you focus on this, you realize what we have to offer people. He says, most atheists see themselves as realists. Their atheism is part of their willingness to square up to the world as it is and face it without recourse to superstitions or comforting fictions about a life to come or a benevolent power looking after us. It is, in other words, who has the true courage is the non-believer. He faces up to the world as it is. Like Sigmund Freud, he faced up to the world as it is. There's no meaning, there's no value, but you don't contemplate it. He says, when you contemplate, you can't contemplate it too much or else you get sick. And then he proceeded to do his thing. But it goes even further than that. There was unfortunately, another nice Jewish boy, a philosopher by the name of Paul Kurtz, and he also writes on this subject, and there's many non-believing philosophers write exactly the same thing. This isn't like some chiddush of mine. He says like this: human life has no meaning independent of itself. That's exactly what Freud said. There is no objective meaning. There is no objective value. It has no meaning independent of itself. The meaning of life is what we choose to give it. Sounds so noble, doesn't it? When in the university lecture hall, when you're up there, the meaning of human life is what we choose to give it. But if you kind of strip it of the philosophical camouflage, what is he saying? He's saying, make something up, give it meaning, and then go ahead and don't think about it anymore. That's what he's saying. Make something up that makes you feel that your life actually does have meaning. Because if not, what are you going to do? Sit around and get sick? So that's what we have to do. You don't understand that people who don't have Hashem, who don't believe in this, who don't have this, are spending most of their time doing nothing but distracting themselves from having to face this simple, obvious reality. It is incredibly painful to face the reality of a meaningless existence. I once heard Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg use the following example. He said, use the example of the sky cap at the airport. Now, it's not a job that requires the most education. You take a suitcase, you put a tag on it, and you put it on a conveyor belt. Hopefully you get a tip. That's what. Now, you do that, let's say, for 30 years, 35 years. You graduate, you finish, you have your pension, you supported your family. Okay, great, wonderful. Take the same guy, okay? Put him in a room. You have a bunch of suitcases, a bunch of tags, and you say, take the suitcase. This is your job for the next 35 years. Take the suitcase, put a tag on it, put it on the conveyor belt that goes around in a circle, take it off, and then go to the next one. How long would this guy last doing that before he is literally howling at the sky like a lunatic? You can't do it. I once read the account. That is the true meaning of what it means to face up to a meaningless existence. And I once read an account of somebody in the Gulag, in the Russian Gulag, under communism, in this network of these horrible prison camps that were in Siberia. He said that one time they marched him out in the middle of the winter and they made him dig a long, narrow hole, a long, narrow ditch. Ostensibly it looked like it was for some kind of piping. Now, you can imagine in the middle of winter, I don't know if you've ever tried to dig in the middle of winter. The ground is it's like digging rock. They were exhausted. They could barely move by the time they got back to the camp. The next morning, they marched them out to the same place and made him fill in the ditch. Why? Why did they do that? What was so horrible about that? And the way I termed it was that you make somebody dig a ditch in a Siberian winter, you break their bodies. You make them the next day fill it in and realize it was all for nothing. That's how you break somebody's soul. And that's one of the most horrible tortures of all, that what you're doing has no meaning at all. And of course, that's why they did it. They did it as a pure act of such cruelty. They knew the effect it would have. So, on the one hand, this philosopher says, we face up, we are realists. We face up to reality without resource to superstitions or comforting fictions. Maybe not superstitions, but comforting fictions they make up all the time. Sigmund Freud couldn't have lived without a comforting fiction. On the one hand, we face up to reality. On the other hand, the philosopher tells us, choose your own meaning, make up your own meaning for life. And then mocks religion because he says it's illusory. And by the way, if that's all we're doing, if we're making up illusions, well, why not make up a religious illusion? I mean, I kind of like the idea of God speaking at Mount Sinai. It's certainly better than believing that I'm nothing more than a glorified tuna fish. I mean, if I have to choose an illusion, I like that illusion. You can have your illusion, I'll have my illusion. But this is the absurdity, and this is the pain of a life without Hashem. I want you to imagine for one moment that you take away all the distractions for a person. You literally, there's no people in the whole world. Someone's totally by themselves. There's no TV, there's no books, and they're looking around. And what happens? Well, we know there was a story like this in the Gemara, Choni Hamagel. And he found himself living in a world that he didn't fit in at all. And he said to Hashem, he cried out and said, "Oh, Chavrus, oh, Masus, I can't live this way. Take me away, Hashem. Either give me a friend," which in that case, it really meant a world that I have a place in, or else take me away. I have to die. I can't live like this. But Choni Hamagel had Hashem to turn to. What about the person who doesn't have Hashem to turn to? You can howl at the sky. As one atheist nihilist, very honest, he said, there is nothing between us and the naked, howling face of the universe. Nothing at all. That's the reality of somebody who lives without Hashem. Okay, they have a lot of distractions to make them forget about it. But we have life to offer. We have real life to offer somebody. That somebody, it's not, if the question in my mind wasn't, why would somebody leave that life and come to me? My question is, how come everybody's not coming? And the reason everybody's not coming is because sometimes people get caught up in their distractions more than others. In any case, what I want to end with, we're talking about implanting a spiritual vision. You know, Thomas Edison said that his success was 2% inspiration and 98% perspiration. And we all know that it's true. To achieve anything, most of it is grinding it out, day after day, showing up, doing it, etc. But without the 2% inspiration, without that vision that's driving you, then it becomes intolerable. It just becomes like avodas perach. What I want to leave you with, I hope, is a little bit of a vision of what we're doing here and what this seminar is all about. My father once pointed out to me something about the tochacha. And today is an appropriate day to talk about the tochacha. I think that any Bal Koreh who, when that parsha comes and doesn't say, can you get somebody else to read this? I mean it doesn't have a feeling like, do I have to read this? Really it means they're disconnected from what's going on here. You read the tochacha, and if you're facing it square on, it's like you don't want to read through it even. But there is one pasuk in the tochacha I think that makes our blood run cold, and I think that if Hashem said, "I'll give you an offer, you can take one pasuk out of the tochacha," I think that all of us, this would be the pasuk we take out. It's in Perek Chav Ches, pasuk Lamed Beis. It says, "Bonecha uvnosecha nesunim la'am acher." Your daughters and your sons will be given over to another nation. Ve'einecha ro'os, your eyes will look. V'cholos aleihem kol hayom, and they'll be longing after them all day. Ve'ein la'el yadecha, you won't have strength to do anything. If you have children, you certainly know it. Even if you don't have children, the idea of your children going off to a foreign nation it makes your heart stop. And maybe of all the things in the tochacha, it's the most terrifying. And we all know that you don't have to be taken away in a slave galley by the Romans to be sold in a Roman slave market to be prisoner of another nation. You can be living in Yerushalayim. We all know, we don't have to even speak about it, that you have children here who are prisoners of the Goyim, and they're living in Yerushalayim. We all know it. We all have seen it. And it's almost too much to bear. It's almost too much to bear. But Hashem sent us the refuah. Hashem sent us the tikva. And the Navi Yeshayahu says the following, and he talks about when we're getting close to Yemos HaMashiach in Perek Memtes. Vatomer Tzion, Azovani Hashem. Tzion has said, Hashem has abandoned me. complete despair. Hashem shtechoni. Hashem has forgotten about me. And Hashem answers back, Hatishkach isha uga meirachem ben bitna. Can a woman forget the child she nursed that she carried around inside of her? And he says, even if they could forget, I will never forget you. And he talks about this horrible thing that's talked about in the Tochacha, about the children who were taken away. And the Navi says the following. He said, Od yomru ba'aznayich b'nei shikulayich. Those children who were taken away from you will yet say in your ears, Tsar li hamakom, the place is too small for me. Gesholi ve'sheva, come to me and I will dwell with you. And this is what the Navi is telling us. The Navi, this is almost 3,000 years ago, and Hashem gave him a vision that's across time and space. And he said, those children will come back. They will come back. You thought there was no hope. What can make someone give up hope more than the fact that their children are gone forever? No, Hashem didn't forget. And how many will come back? And those children will say, there's not enough room for me. Make room for me. I want to live with you. I want to come back to you. And how many will come back? It seems from the Navi, as many as we make room for, that's how many will come back. If anything, the fact that I'm standing in front of you today, and if anything I said, I hope at least something I said made a difference to somebody that's sitting here. If I'm standing here today, it's only because somebody took the trouble to make room for me. Atotokum rachim tzion, terachim tzion, ki eis lechenna, ki v'moed, b'imher of yameinu. Amen.